Hello urban sketchers, welcome to another tutorial. Today we'll be sketching this street in Naples, Italy with the help of a reference photo that you can find in the video description below. This is a mixed media sketch created with pen, ink, watercolor and acrylic markers, and this is a really fun sketch because you get to play with positive and negative shapes. So this is a close-up of the sketch. Before I start, I just want to mention that this video you're watching is actually the time-lapse version of the full-length tutorial that I've created for my patrons. So if you want to watch the step-by-step full-length tutorial, consider supporting me on Patreon to support my YouTube channel and the work that I do here. The first thing you should do when you're out on location sketching is to take some time to walk around to find the best scene, the best composition that you can get. Now this photo was taken by the photographer who was standing in the middle of the street. So if you are sketching at this place, chances are you will not be sketching in the middle of the street because that's too dangerous. There will be vehicles passing by all the time. So chances are you will be sketching this scene from the sidewalk. And since there are so many vehicles parked alongside of the street, it's going to be difficult to find a good spot to set your chair down. So chances are you may be standing on the sidewalk or in front of a parked vehicle to sketch this scene. So for this sketch, I just placed a few pencil lines just to mark out the composition first, and then I proceed to wet the paper so that I can paint wet on wet. The colors that I've used here are yellow ochre, if I remember correctly, Hansa yellow medium, transparent pyro orange on the right, and maybe some burnt sienna. Okay, I'm actually not too sure what other colors that I use. Anyway, regardless of which colors you use, try to limit yourself to a limited color palette so that the colors can work well together. So once the paint has dried, once the first layer has dried, now I'm actually drawing the buildings and the laundry hanging between the buildings. To make it easier to draw the perspective for this scene, you should find out where the vanishing point is. And this is a one-point perspective scene. So the vanishing point is actually quite low. I would say it's above the car tires. If you look at the lady silhouette in the background, the vanishing point is, if I'm not wrong, at the right side of that lady, somewhere in the middle of the road, above the road. You don't have to know exactly where the vanishing point is. You just have to know roughly where the vanishing point is so that when you draw the diagonal lines of the buildings, such as the top and bottom of the windows and balconies, all those diagonal lines will go to the vanishing point. And this will help you draw the angles more accurately. When drawing, I will start with the balconies in the foreground first, the balconies that overlap other balconies in the background, and also overlapping the vertical compressed lines due to perspective. And when drawing, pay very special attention to the space between the balconies, such as the balconies on the top floor versus the floor below and then the floor below. So if you can get the spacing right, you will get the proportion right and your scene will look more real, more accurate. By the way, for this sketch, I did not draw all the vertical lines because I want to suggest some of the vertical lines and shapes using watercolor. So the sunlight seems to be coming from the right side, but there are no cast shadows. But you can still see the lit areas on the left side of the wall. And on the right side, the building is predominantly in shade, which is why for the second layer of wash, you can see me paint a much darker shade. If I remember correctly, I've used ultramarine and permanent brown to mix the darker shade on the right side. And while painting, try to leave some highlighted areas just to create that play with positive and negative shapes. It's this play of positive and negative shapes that makes the scene look more interesting. So if you look at the laundry, you can see some of the laundry, they are lit by sunlight, especially the ones at the top. And there are some laundry that are in mid value, and some of the laundry are just really dark, almost black. So you really want to capture this mix of light, medium, and dark values for not just the laundry, but for the whole scene. And notice I did not use ink to draw the outline for the laundry because I know in advance that I will be painting the laundry using watercolor. I want to use watercolor to create the shapes of the laundry. So drawing the laundry with ink lines seems unnecessary. By the way, this is not an exact copy of the photo in terms of the details because I have used a lot of artistic license to add details that are not shown in the photograph, that are not shown in the scene, and I have also used my artistic license to not draw many of the vertical lines. If you want to draw all the details exactly where they are, this sketch is going to take a long time to complete. So now you can see me use acrylic markers to add some details such as the railings for the balconies. Now when painting, it would be good to think in advance how you're going to use acrylic markers. For example, if you want to use light colored markers like white or yellow, then make sure you paint certain areas darker so that you can use the lighter colors on top of the darker watercolor later on. So this is actually a very lively scene because of the mix of light versus dark, positive versus negative shapes, and also the organic nature of the laundry versus the very structural, solid architecture. I'm also using the acrylic markers to add spots of highlights. And also note that for the laundry lines, those lines that are against lighter background will be drawn with black ink, and laundry lines that are above darker backgrounds will be drawn with the white gel pen. So at this stage, the sketch is almost done, and you can add a few more details just to increase the contrast, just to make certain areas darker. So this is the completed sketch and I'm quite pleased with it. So the first wet on wet wash really brings the whole scene together, and when you use a limited color palette, all the colors will just naturally work well together. So for this particular sketch, I probably used 5 colors. There's yellow, red, and ultramarine. Phthalo blue is used to create the really dark or black values. And then there is permanent brown, so that I can mix the dark grays on the right side. Here's a close-up. So if you look at the laundry, you can see that I have drawn some of the outlines with acrylic markers, just to make things look more interesting instead of just drawing all the lines with black. And of course, the last stage is to remove the tape. The tape that I'm using is just this matte tape, and the watercolor paper that I'm using is the Etcher Lab 100% cotton watercolor paper with cold press texture. So when you are removing the tape, make sure to pull slowly so that you don't pull off the paper fiber. This is nice. I'm quite satisfied with the sketch.